A vague disclaimer is no one's friend. This podcast will look at episodes in relation to Buffy and Angel as a whole, and therefore contains spoilers for the entirety of both series. If you haven't seen all of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel the series, go and watch them before you listen to this. Remember, you've been warned.
The hardest thing in this world is to live in it.
That's why there's us, champions. We live as though the world were as it should be, to show it what it can be.
The Earth is definitely doomed.
It's Tuesday, so it must be time to return to the Hellmouth. We're going through the Buffyverse episode by episode, and a look back at Joss Whedon's iconic shows. I'm MC, and I'm here with...
This is David.
And I'm Logan.
And this week, this is a fun week. I'm sure our listeners have been waiting for this episode, considering everything we have to say about Xander. We are reviewing the Zeppo, which is episode 13 of season 3, and was written by Dan Weber and directed by James Whitmore Jr., and originally aired January 26, 1999.
And it shows.
So on the upside, this is our 50th episode.
This is our 50th episode! Yay! Yeah, we've gotten through 50 episodes of this franchise, and I don't know what I think about this being the 50th episode. Other than the fact that I think people are very entertained to hear us talk about Xander. So, there's that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we start out this episode with a random fight against what we will find out is the Sisterhood of Jay. And
we will not care that it's the Sisterhood of Jay.
No, we will not. It's a good piece of trivia to have for like pub nights, or if you're writing fanfic and you want to make a really deep cut. I'm not saying I've done that before. I've totally done that before.
Yeah, I'm really glad you followed up so quickly. My face couldn't hold that incredulous look for too long.
No, I actually literally did have the Sisterhood of Jay show up again. When I created New Hellmouth, I had them show up along with the ones from Doomed. Because it's like Hellmouth monsters. Yeah. And because, I do love deep cuts. This fight, it's fighty. It's,
Faith is there.
Faith is there, yeah.
It's like, hey, where you been, Faith? What's up?
Yeah, and she's there with no comment. That's what's really strange about it. That, it's just like, hey, Faith.
You're here.
And the only reason she is there is because of what will happen later.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hold on to that pain. You'll need it later.
Yeah, we will hold on to that. There's not really much to say about this fight because it's so everything that happens to anybody who's not Xander is so by the numbers, which I get is by design, because the way they've described this episode is as a deconstruction of a Buffy episode. And I can kind of get that.
I get that that's what they were trying to do.
Yeah, the thing is with this episode, I'm usually a fan of these types of things. Like, obviously, what this episode is trying to be is Rosencrantz and Guildenstern are dead. But Dan Weber is an okay writer, but he's not Tom Stoppard.
A few people are.
No. That hadn't even occurred to me, and now I'm even more depressed about this episode.
Yeah. I'd never even... Yeah, now it's pretty obvious.
Now it's there, it's stuck in your brain, and it will never go away. Yeah, because, there is kind of like this whole subgenre of television and movies where it's like, well, what's happening when, the big stories are being told. These, also known as Lower Deck episodes, after a Next Generation episode. Though, part of my problem with this acting as a Lower Deck episode is that Xander is not a Lower Deck character.
He's not.
They really shoehorn him into this whole Zeppo role. When we've never seen any version of this before, it would make so much... okay, I'm going to throw this out there because I always love to do my what if they did the episode like this. What if this episode were all about Jonathan instead?
I was just... Get the fuck out of my head, MC. Get the fuck out of my head. Oh, because he plays such a central role in a later episode, sort of. But, yeah, I was sitting here thinking either Jonathan or Larry would be great, especially after seeing Badass Larry in the Wishverse. I would have...
Yeah, using an actual minor character would have worked so much better.
Larry, I think, would have made sense with Jack and his friends.
Yeah,
a little bit more.
Because Larry's on the football team, and the absurdly monikered Bob the Teenager never happens. Is clearly in some sort of sports team because he's wearing a Letterman jacket. So, just...
Yeah, which apparently he was buried in.
Yeah. I think they do that too.
I guess.
Sometimes, yeah. Also in Sunnydale,
phrase.
I wonder, if there's like a callousness almost with
it's
people.
Like, oh, this is what you died in. This is what we're going to bury you in. we got too many people to bury. We can't worry about clothing.
People do seem to get buried really fast in Sunnydale. Because it's like the day after they're dead, suddenly they're in the ground. And that does not happen.
No.
Well, if they're Jewish, it should happen.
Yeah. I was literally about to say, well, maybe there's a very large Jewish population in Sunnydale, but it doesn't seem like literally Willow might be.
Willow's
it's like Willow's family seems to be it.
And isn't Sarah Michelle, maybe not like religiously, but isn't she Jewish?
She might be partially, I'm not sure. I've never looked into the...
Don't know, but Buffy certainly.
So, one of the only things that I have from this opening scene is Willow's joke about I brought marshmallows, about the burning of the bodies. Reminded me so hard of Molly Hooper from Sherlock.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh.
Yeah. We do have Willow's I'm occasionally callous and strange line, which has been in my email sig file pretty much since this episode aired.
Nice. But yeah, no, that reminded me hardcore of Molly, and reminded me of why I like Willow.
Mm-hmm.
And it seems like Superman was really on the brains of the writers.
Yeah, and this is, and Jimmy Olsen, yet another thing that actually originated in arguably originated in the radio show.
Oh, okay.
I don't believe Jimmy was ever... There's a character who's appeared in the comics before the radio show who people have retroactively assumed is Jimmy Olsen, but I don't believe he was ever named until the radio show.
Okay. I have never actually heard any of the Superman radio show. I just know various bits of trivia from it.
Right.
But yeah, no, somebody had Superman on the brain because they had that big long kryptonite conversation in the last episode, and all of a sudden now we're getting Jimmy Olsen. So it's like, I don't know, somebody was maybe reading... I'm trying to think of what was out in Superman comics in 1999. But was that when Superman Blue was going on?
99. Was this like just post Death of Superman?
It might have been post Death of Superman.
Yes, that could do it. Yeah.
Yeah, when suddenly Superman was, everywhere again.
Yeah.
But this scene is so nothing because it's just there to be like, there's an evil going on and Xander's useless.
It's a fighty fight.
It's a fighty fight, yeah.
We get some, correct me if I'm wrong, we rarely get definitively gendered demons. I thought it was interesting that Faith immediately commented on the idea that they were women, or at least female. I'm heavy air quotes here, listeners, female demons.
Well, we often get gendered demons, but it's very rarely that we get female demons.
Female demons, yeah.
Yes. Yeah, that's interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
You're right that is unusual. I have no idea what the significance of that might be.
Somebody came up with the name, I guess.
Maybe.
Yeah. We do get female demons, but they turn up a lot more on Angel, but they're a lot more sexualized. They're kind of more your Orion slave girl, Twi'lek type thing, where it's like, you're really sexy with, colored skin and stuff like that.
Literally, my only note is the word fight for this opening scene.
That's because that's all there really is.
It is a fighty fight. My other note, actually, I do have one other note, and this will be the beginning of a theme for this episode for me.
Ooh.
Is let's start with things being totally out of character for everybody. Can you name a single time previously where people gave a shit about Xander's safety to the point where they're like, you just shouldn't be in this fight?
Never.
Nope,
never
doesn't happen. Doesn't happen. No one gives a shit if Xander gets killed, and now they're all like, well, it's good that you just dropped into a corner at the beginning of the fight, because you shouldn't be in this fight. And then they continue this for the entire rest of the episode.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, this is why they are trying so hard to put Xander into the Zeppo role to make it a lower decks episode. And the thing is, Xander is not a lower deck character. He has always been in the middle of the fray, and he doesn't care about his safety, and nobody else cares about his safety because he's part of the unit. Buffy will say that later on. He's part of the unit.
Now, and this is my complaint with a lot of these special stories, like in any franchise, is that to do them, they proceed to take everyone and put them totally out of character. Just so they can do this story. And it really drives me nuts. I will have comments about the apocalypse in this episode later, but
it is probably not surprising, but this episode is what inspired Russell T. Davies to do Love and Monsters.
Love and Monsters. Yep.
But Love and Monsters is actually better. I know a lot of people hate it, but
I like it. I mean, I could do it.
I like Love and Monsters. And the great thing about Love and Monsters, it doesn't take the existing characters and give them totally new characters.
It's not like it's an episode about Rose Tyler that's suddenly turning her into like this weird thing that she is not.
Right. In fact, it does it in a great way because it doesn't even use second-tier characters. It uses characters we've never seen before.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's ostensibly about... Oh, fuck me. Why can't I remember Rose's mom's name?
Jackie.
Oh, Jackie. Jackie does appear in it, yes.
Yeah, it's ostensibly about Jackie, sort of, but it is more about the people who experience the fallout from the Doctor's existence on our planet.
Exactly.
And I could personally do without and I'm punning entirely here, that last gag in Love and Monsters.
A lot of people would.
Yeah,
do without that.
Overall, I really enjoy that episode. I like what they tried to do. They did it effectively, and I think that's pretty common with Russell T. Davies. But that's it's in my notes as well.
I really think this episode, if you think about it as part, as, you know, like taking off of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, it would be like trying to write Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead, but using Horatio or Laertes instead.
Right.
Like somebody who is like right in the middle of everything, and it's like, let's see what they were doing during the time.
Yes.
And it's like, you don't need to know. Because Rosencrantz and
Apocalypse.
The reason Rosencrantz and Guildenstern works is because in a lot of productions, well, not anymore because they're so famous now, but in older productions, they were often just cut out entirely because they were so... They didn't matter.
Even in modern productions, it's not like they have a lot to do. I mean, it's just not there in the script. This is more like taking like Claudius or Gertrude and telling it from their perspective and doing it badly.
But we get past the opening credits and we get to Xander being an ass trying to be cool.
Yeah, and again, when does he do this? He hasn't done this since like episode 1.
Maybe what they were trying to talk about is how he's faring after everything happened with Willow and Cordelia.
I could see that if they addressed it at all, because basically the only time that's addressed is... I mean, it's not even... Cordelia's mean to him, but that's kind of it. This episode feels like a regression for a lot of the characters. They feel more season 1-y in their portrayals.
Yeah, and they open pretty quickly with a super fun slur. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
All right,
I did not remember that until... Yeah. And it's not even like it's just the slur that's there, but then they double down on it by having Xander make a joke about it.
Do like, come on. And if it were them, like, actually, if that was the reality, and they showed that as being part of Xander's life, and him actually dealing with that, fine. Nope, he just doesn't like school.
Like, I would probably have been okay with the slur, because Jack is obviously, like, a horrific, evil
shithead
person.
Yeah.
But the fact that then they had Xander double down on it, where it's like, this is literally supposed to be a joke.
Yep.
So, it's, like, not cool. But, like, let's get to the most important part of this scene, and that's Cordelia coming in and being just wonderfully Cordelia.
A few things. Do you think she just picked up on things about Superman from Xander? And why the fuck does she know who Zeppo Marx is?
I was wondering how any of these people know who Zeppo Marx is.
I have a big thing to talk about with this, because I am a huge Marx Brothers fan, to the point of I have dressed as Harpo Marx for Halloween. And I actually think I am going to be doing another Marx Brothers-based cosplay. So I know my shit on the Marx Brothers. And I just don't understand how Cordelia knows. I think I can see the Superman stuff be from Xander, but I mean, sometimes we do get these references where it's like these super smart references. Like in a later episode, I think Buffy says that she makes Godot look punctual, and it's like, where does this come from? And it's the writers obviously wanting to make the reference and putting them in the mouths of people that it doesn't really make sense from. But I don't know, I'm willing to give Cordelia the benefit of the doubt, because one, I love me a Marx Brothers reference, and Cordelia we know does have hidden depths. Now, the one thing that I have a problem with is that, you know, the writers obviously know enough to make a Zeppo reference, but they don't know enough to understand actually who Zeppo Marx is.
Was he a straight man?
Well, here's the thing about Zeppo. Zeppo was actually considered the funniest of his brothers. Okay. He just had no interest in being an actor.
Right.
So he worked with them in vaudeville, and then up until they went on to Broadway, and then he did a couple of movies, and he's like, this isn't for me, and then he went and he started a talent agency with Gummo. But he was considered the funniest of his brothers. He could fill in any, like, he was actually like an understudy for most of them, because they all had their very specific niches, but Zeppo could be kind of funny in place of all of them. So if one of them got sick, he was able to fill in for them right away. He could work on a dime. He had a great singing voice. So I am like a huge supporter of Zeppo, so I don't like him being used as an insult.
No, I get that.
Is it too much to assume that that's what they were? It was like a many-layered joke?
No, that's not what they were going for.
No. And also, I will stipulate that it's quite possible that people would know who Jimmy Olsen is. I can buy that. But again, Jimmy Olsen's a lot more significant a character than they're giving him any credit for here.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I mean, he had his own book that ran for, I think, 163 issues.
Yeah. and you've also got to think about the time that this came out. This came out during the era of Lois and Clark, when I believe that was actually, it had maybe just stopped airing, when they actually portrayed Jimmy as like a pretty, you know, like, he wasn't like the bow tie wearing, you know, little wimp. Like, he was actually like a very competent character. They actually had to recast him because the guy that they originally had looked too much like the guy playing Superman. So yeah, Cordelia basically only exists in the scene to tear Xander down, which is granted a role that she was really good at. Yeah. But again, it is more, let's tear Xander down so that we can give him an ego boost that I don't really think... I don't think it works. Honestly, like with this, as I was watching this entire episode and kind of when we got to the scene with Faith, I just kept on thinking, I don't know if this episode really happened. I think it's just a dream Xander is having.
I would totally buy that, quite frankly.
It ends up explaining so much about this episode, how everybody kind of acts... They are themselves, but they're just a little bit off. And, you know, you have dreams where it's like, I know you are who you are, but you're not quite right. And then all of this fucking wish fulfillment that comes in with Xander, it's like, I think he's trying to work out some, like, deep-seated, you know, issues about himself through his dreams.
No, if it were to turn out that, like, at some point, like... The production staff would come out and go, oh yeah, we actually meant that all to be a dream. I buy that completely. Yep.
Yeah, and I mean, this episode doesn't play into anything else later on except for Faith sleeping with Xander. That is the only plot point from this that has any impact on the actual story. So
I think as far as the end is concerned, we see Xander being the best of Xander, and we see it when push comes to shove throughout the series, but yeah, I'm on board with that.
I mean, there is some stuff that I like. I do think that they made an attempt in this episode.
There are some things.
Yeah. Nikki does a really good job with his acting, especially like in his last scene. But yeah, this episode's really weird. So I guess the next scene is Xander with Oz, which is actually a scene I like because I think Oz is really in character.
Oz is good. He's written well. I am so disgusted by the use of the word trim in the scene.
Yeah, no, I hated that. But Oz, this is actually a quintessential Oz scene. And one thing I really like about this is an Oz scene where he is interacting with Xander, and neither of them mention Willow.
Right, it's a reverse Bechdel Wallace.
I was just thinking that.
Yeah, and what I especially like about it is it's not too terribly long after all that drama between them, which is interesting, because I would not be as sanguine as Oz, but, that's Oz.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in this episode where it's like, don't you guys remember that? Are you guys trying to forget that plotline as quickly as we are? Because you have, like, Willow very, easily saying, I love you, Xander. And Oz and Xander being totally cool with each other, and it's like, okay, so you guys are just going to forget this? We're pretty happy with that, too.
Fine.
Yeah.
It's forgotten.
Except for Xander, pretty much every character in this episode is written about 1.5 dimensional.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously. I mean, like, these characters are all... Everyone is a plot device.
Oh, yeah,
in
definitely.
This story. It is, I mean,
That's really, really spot on. You get Oz being a werewolf, Willow casting spells, and Buffy and Angel having drama.
Here is my big problem with it, and I know I bring up the Watsonian versus the Doyleist a lot, but I think that it's, and from a Doyleist perspective, I understand what they're trying to do. They're trying to do a deconstruction to the point of parody, which is kind of a neat idea. But then if you actually look at it from the Watsonian perspective, it's like, this is what Xander thinks of his friends, because it's all from his point of view. So he does not have any connection with any of these people. He's just seeing all this surface stuff from them, and nothing is there. There's just absolutely no connection.
Yeah, I think I don't even get to the Watsonian perspective, because I basically hit a roadblock when I realized, like, that you're spot on about your Doylean analysis. But my thing is, yes, that's what they were trying to do, and they did a really shitty job. They just did it's badly written. I mean, the story structure of the whole story structure is terrible. The characters are written completely threadbare, and just everything about this episode, almost everything, just made me crazy. I was really disappointed watching this again.
But we get to Giles telling Buffy that the end is coming, and
yawn.
That happens. Yeah, I mean, that's the thing with every scene that does not have Xander in it. There is absolutely nothing to examine in them, because they don't matter. Though, in the next scene with Willow and Buffy, I do like Buffy's line of, I need my Willow. I thought that was a very nice moment between them. And when Xander comes up in that big car, and Buffy's line of, is this a penis metaphor? I have used that many, many times.
Yeah. And thank God that car is an automatic, because Xander doesn't know how to drive shift.
Wow.
I will say that, but about, now that we've hit the whole apocalypse thing, I will go into my annoyance at it. As anyone who knows much about Hitchcock knows, there is this thing called the MacGuffin.
Yes.
And people talk about the MacGuffin. I think people often actually get it wrong, at least from Hitchcock's perspective. I went and actually looked up Hitchcock's actual comments on it. And the MacGuffin is, for Hitchcock, something that the characters are tremendously invested in, but to the storyteller does not matter at all. And this apocalypse is a perfect example of a Hitchcockian MacGuffin. There is this apocalypse doesn't matter. We are never made to care about it. Even it's like in Clara's last season on Doctor Who, where Clara and Danny are supposedly, they keep saying they're so in love to set up the final episode, but we never see them doing anything that indicates that they're actually in love. And here it's like, it's an apocalypse. It's the worst ever. This is worse than anything we've ever faced. Bullshit.
I will give them a bit of leeway on the apocalypse because they face 13 apocalypses.
What's the plural of apocalypse?
Apocalypses.
Yeah, they faced 13 of them over the course of, I believe that's over both Buffy and Angel, but they don't have as many on Angel. And that's an awful lot. So I think, and we do see it in Doomed, that they end up getting rather jaded when it comes to the apocalypses. So I think that this was kind of them realizing that you can't really make much of a story about an apocalypse because they overuse it on Buffy.
I think they could have done more here if they were willing to spend more time with the other characters.
But that is obviously not what they were trying to do. They wanted to do a Xander episode, and it's like, let's have like the most exciting thing in the world happening in the background without Xander interacting with it at all.
And without making it actually exciting. That's my biggest problem with it is they talk about how huge a thing it is. We never see anything to indicate that it's anywhere near as huge as they're saying it is.
And even if it is, what point are they trying to make ultimately? That the Scooby Gang can survive and function and be successful without Xander? Because if that's the point they're trying to make, yeah, they did.
I believe the point that they are trying to make is that Xander is strong on his own and that he can function without the Scoobies. But I don't think that it really comes off very well, especially because everybody in Xander's plot, like, not only are like our main characters really one-dimensional, but everybody in Xander's plotline is one-dimensional. I have pop quiz. What is the name of the girl that Xander is hanging out with?
Does she have a name?
She does. It is actually Lizette, but it's never fucking mentioned.
Oh, okay.
But they actually named her?
They actually named her in the credits.
Well, it's doing better than a lot of Quentin Tarantino films, so...
Also, she's really annoying.
She is really annoying. The only reason Xander's hanging out with her is because her little sweater is unbuttoned.
Yeah. No, I mean, talk about one-dimensional characters.
And Jack is an incredibly uninteresting bad guy.
Yep.
And I mean, like, Xander was being nice to Angel so that he could get away from that girl.
Right.
Like, that's how annoying Xander finds this girl. That, though he still hangs out with her.
Which says a lot about Xander.
Yeah.
Yes. And Cordy refers to Angel as Xander's friend. When she runs through, all your friends are this or that or the other, or a vampire, and it's like, you think Angel and Xander are friends? It's like God, this is like, it's like Buffy Bizarro World.
Yeah. And, well, yeah, we're moving forward in the scenes really quickly, just because there's not a lot to say about a lot of these scenes, because, you know, we have Xander at the Bronze with Angel, and the gang researching, and Giles and his jelly donuts. And does anybody believe that Buffy actually ate 3 jelly donuts?
Yes. It's, I mean...
Is it Slayer metabolism?
Maybe, but it's mentioned on a couple of times of how much of a, I mean, specifically after slaying, but how much of a pig is, I think, one of the quotes. But yeah, I can see.
I'm kind of surprised she's never noticed that Giles likes the jelly donuts and left one for him.
I took it as a, oh shit, we eat the jelly donuts without thinking. We know Giles likes them, so let's pretend like we don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe jelly donuts? Fuck, our bad.
I'm the one who always asks if we can get jelly donuts.
Buffy ate 3. Great. That was a good bit of comedy, and unlike
and seriously, way to throw Buffy under the donut bus, Will. This is.
Well, when Xander is actually ordering the donuts, I did find his order funny, because he's like, and a jelly donut. No, let's round that up to 4. who rounds up to 4? I mean, from 1 to 4. I mean, granted, you needed more than that. You probably needed to do 6 of that of that dozen donuts being jelly, but
right.
And I don't know if anybody will remember this. Is the box they use for the donuts pink?
Yes,
I believe so. Yes.
Okay. I wish I could actually remember the reason why that became a thing enough to articulate it, but I don't. But it's an interesting thing to do with, like, Armenian families in Southern California.
Yes.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah, it was, I believe, very
thing.
common at donut places. They had, like, these grosses of pink boxes, and it just kind of became a tradition. It's kind of like how on all TV shows people will ask for pizzas with the works and then say no anchovies, and it's like, well, you know, at most normal places, you know, you have to ask for specific ingredients. It's because of a store in Southern California that, like, most writers get pizza from. So
yeah, it's coming back to me now. I think it has to do with specifically these families. Yeah, like they were cheaper because nobody was buying them, like, by default. So they would just buy them more cheaply. Yeah. Pointless, but more interesting than a lot of this episode.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And pizza, more proof that California doesn't know how to do pizza. But go on.
Yeah, because anchovies are delicious. Okay, so we get Xander. He is a bad driver and hits Jack's not car.
Yeah.
And Jack is threatening him with that Crocodile Dundee looking knife.
His compensation knife?
Yes.
His compensation knife, yes.
They don't name Lizette, but they do name the knife.
Yes, I actually have that note. That they don't name the girl that Xander hangs out with, but they name the knife multiple times.
She's like in 5 scenes of this fucking episode. What the hell?
But, okay, so the police officer comes over and wants to know what the hell is going on. And Jack is straight up trying to murder Xander. And he doesn't say shit. Like, the cop knew who Jack was.
Mm-hmm.
And was obviously looking for a reason to arrest him. And Xander's just like... Instead, Xander throws in some homophobia. Instead of being like, arrest this guy who was just trying to murder me.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's much more important to, you know, say that he's not gay than to say that this guy was going to murder him.
It makes absolutely no sense, and it's just kind of all of the problems that Xander gets into in this episode are all by his own fucking doing.
Oh, it's all down to Xander won't say anything to anyone. I mean, every time he encounters one of the Scooby Gang, he's like, can I help? But I'm not going to mention that there are fucking zombies running around trying to kill me.
Yeah.
It's like, he never tells anyone, like, while it's happening.
Yeah.
Like, when he encounters Giles, it's like, he's away from them. He could easily tell Giles without them hearing him.
By the way, there's this guy who's raising zombies.
Yeah.
It might have something to do with your apocalypse, but I don't know because I'm not communicating with you.
Actually, think about that. It might well have something to do with the apocalypse because Jack talks about the stars aligning.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So doesn't it make sense that the stars would align and that's why they're able to open up the Hellmouth?
Mm-hmm. I have a comment about that once we get to that scene.
And also, like, we already had, the last time the Hellmouth was opened, we had all of these signs that were happening. It was, you know, all dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria.
Mm-hmm.
I will never give up a chance to quote Ghostbusters. But we do get to Jack raising the boys, and basically the only thing I have to say is, hey, it's baby Michael Cudlitz, who will later become famous for being on The Walking Dead.
Well, at least he's keeping up with a theme. Grandpappy. So the stars had to be aligned for Jack to raise his friends from the dead. How come Grandpappy didn't have to wait for the stars to be aligned to raise Jack from the dead?
I know, right?
Maybe if you do it within 10 minutes, it's okay. But if it's longer, you need to wait for the stars.
Okay, so why was Grandpappy with Jack during that drive-by?
Maybe they were just in the car together, and Jack got shot, and Grandpa was there, and said, "Well, I I can't have my grandson be all dead and shit.
Oh, dead and shit.
But here's the real question. Okay, so Jack has been left back several times in high school. And
yeah, because he's clearly like 25.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But he definitely seems like somebody who doesn't care about his education, but he still continues to go, right. Even after he has become a zombie.
He just wants to hang out with people.
All of his friends are dead.
Well, I think he wants to hang out and just be menacing.
Yeah.
That's what he does in his spare time. It's like, I'm going to menace people.
But poorly.
Yeah.
And we have Giles consult the spirit guides, and this is, I think, one of the first times we've actually seen Giles use spiritual sources. It's something that will come up a lot more over the both this and Angel. Both Giles and Wesley, once they get out of the Watchers Council, do kind of go to more direct sources. Which I actually think it makes a lot more sense than trying to read all of these portenses that have been, like, written in, like, the 15th century by some crazy monk, and it needs to be translated from, like, 3 different languages.
Right. I have to question, though. It's like, does Giles really not have any other mystical knowledge contacts?
I was wondering
outside
that myself.
The council? I mean, it's like all those, like the monks, they're not all members of the council. The monks who are writing crazy shit. It's right. Like, I mean, I don't get it. Oh, wait, I do get it. It's a plot device, because this thing is made entirely of duct tape and plot devices.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is plot device, and if I'm going to fanwank it, it'll be that Giles was such a company man up until, like, he took himself out of it because of his affection for Buffy, that maybe the council has rules against going to these kinds of sources.
And he's still observing those rules?
I mean, up until that point. And especially since you could imagine that he did such a hard 180 after his Ripper days, that he would adhere as strictly as possible. Like, I sort of imagine Giles before Buffy as, like, proto-Wesley.
Oh yeah, definitely. That is...
So it scans, like anything he would have, like any sort of contacts he would have made during his Ripper days don't have anything to do with him because he's working with the council. And I think the only time we ever see anything like that is What's-His-Face, who was going to curse Angel, but didn't because Giles introduced him to his wife. I'm on board with MC, I think.
I don't know. I mean, it just seems that even when he was still part of the council, Giles was the kind of person who, in an apocalypse situation, would do what needed to be done, even if it was outside council rules.
How many apocalypses do you think he encountered while,
Okay,
how many have we had so far?
There was the one in Prophecy Girl. There was the one that Angel started in becoming part 2. There was the Judge, which was... I wouldn't call that an apocalypse. I would call that a decimation.
Well, yeah. When I say apocalypse, it's sort of apocalypse level.
Specifically before Buffy. Before
Buffy, I don't think there were any.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So, I who the fuck knows, man?
Yeah. It's bad writing. Hey, we have an answer.
We get the scene of Buffy and Willie together, and this is a scene of Willie, and he's basically saying, like, yeah, Willie's always nice to see, but it's such a useless scene, because it's basically, like, hole up with Angel, and we don't know what's going on, like, why the Sisterhood of Jay is specifically going after Buffy and Angel.
I don't think it's Willie. I think it's a simulacrum of Willie made up entirely of exposition.
Or why Angel has to die to stop it.
Yeah.
Or why whatever Giles is doing is so dangerous.
Because basically what the writers did when they were writing this episode, they wrote the Xander plot, and then they had all of these holes for scenes with everybody else, and it's like, let's write the most stereotypical episode of Buffy we can. And not even, like, the most stereotypical episode of Buffy. Let's write the most stereotypical season finale of Buffy, and then not include anything about it in it.
I'd take it one step further and say, let's write a parody of a season finale of Buffy. It almost reaches the level of parody.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And that's why I think MC's suggestion, or was it David who did the dream suggestion? MC?
It was me.
Yeah. It stands even further because I mean this is just Xander's perspective on his weird, bizarro world friends. Man, this episode. I usually skip this one. I'm going to go ahead and let y'all know straight off. It's rare that I watch this episode in my watch throughs.
Yeah. And I have to say, it's like, although Xander does do some terrible things in this, for once, he's not the reason I don't like this episode.
Xander's not terrible in this episode. I mean, there's some,
he's been worse.
There's low-level Xander annoyance. Like, I roll my eyes at him a little bit, but he's not bad. By the way, since River is not here this episode, Skywalker is filling in as our pod kitty.
Hello, Skywalker.
Hi, Skywalker.
Look at that handsome baby.
He is. I found him in my backyard.
So rarely on camera for us. Are we at this scene with Xander and Faith at this point?
We are. Well, we have
Xander.
Willie says, "Do what you would want to do on your last day," and so then we see Bob saying, "Let's drink some beers." And
I really hang out at Taco Bell. What a fucking gift! That line is incredible, and it's barely understandable. I had to turn the subtitles on to make sure I heard it correctly for the first time. I've never noticed that line, and I was laughing very hard, which is impressive for this episode.
I do want to know how we can explain away Xander participating in multiple felonies and just nothing happens with it. Because, I mean, like, the thing is, even though he's in the car just waiting, he's still an accessory to, like, all of this stuff that they do.
I can only assume that nothing really happens with that because Sunnydale.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, that cop somehow missed that giant penis metaphor that O'Toole calls a knife. Even though, like, you see the flashlight on it. So, cops in Sunnydale are so fucking incompetent.
Xander, then, they're doing crimes, so Xander, runs away, and then he ends up... I mean, I guess, like, this is a sign that Sunnydale is so fucking small that he just keeps on running into members of the Scooby Gang, or, Scooby members adjacent, because he ran into Giles just randomly, and now he's gonna randomly run into Faith, so I guess Sunnydale is... Like, my town is actually smaller than Sunnydale is supposed to be. Do you know how hard it is for me to run into somebody that I actually know?
Same.
And conversely, I live in New York City, and I run into people I know all the time. So it's... Sunnydale expands and contracts to fit the plot.
David, do you think that's because you know everybody?
That's probably part of it. It also seems to be like just a New York thing. It just happens.
It's the magic of the city.
Like, I am not the only one. I mean, like, this happens to everybody. It's like, oh, hey, how are you? It's
bananas.
Faith is fighting one of the plot contrivances, and Xander hits it with the car.
Can we talk about the car for a second? I meant to earlier. Fine, Bel Air. Nice. You know what's better? 59 Ford Fairlane. Just saying.
Yeah, but he got it from Uncle Rory, so he's not getting the best.
Still, okay. I have to say that it's a fairly nice car considering what we know about Xander's family background. They sound pretty white trash from everything we know of them.
Oh, they're definitely white trash. As someone who grew up white trash, I'm surprised they don't have cars on blocks in their yard. But
maybe this was on blocks and Xander just put tires on it.
Yeah, my headcanon is that Uncle Roy won it in a game of poker.
I could see that, yeah.
Drunken game of poker.
We will only see Uncle Rory once in Hell's Bells when he's talking about stuffing things.
It's the eyes.
But
I don't want to think about Roy stuffing anything.
So Xander rescues Faith by hitting the plot contrivance with the car, and then they go back.
It's the plot contrivance with the penis metaphor. It's
I am going to make that into a T-shirt.
Do it.
I'm down with that.
Incredible.
We have way too many T-shirts that relate to Xander. I need to come up with some other ones. But they go back to Faith's apartment, and, okay, the apocalypse is coming. So they actually, like, at this point, they know that it's going to happen that night. And this is, like, kind of the moment where I'm just like, yeah, I think this is Xander's dream, because all of a sudden we get into this overwrought, like...
Actually, we haven't seen Faith since the first scene.
Fair enough, yeah.
And the Scoobies have a habit of not including Faith in shit. Maybe she doesn't know the apocalypse is tonight.
That is actually a good point. So maybe they just have Faith, like, out there patrolling for these sisterhood people while they do, like, the heavy lifting. Mm-hmm. That could honestly happen.
Let's just let Faith do that. We won't bother her with the details.
Yeah. Still,
I could totally see them doing that.
Still, this love scene is so awkward and over the top, and...
Confirmed. Absolutely zero Cordelia and Xander sex.
Absolutely confirmed, yes.
Yep.
Because he's never been naked with up with other people? Is that what he said?
Yeah, no, I will give... There are 2 lines in here that I think are actually really good lines. The I've never really been up with people before. And of course she says, calm down. Calm down and take off your pants. And he goes, those 2 concepts are antithetical.
I've never been up with people before. What is going on with them making out in the car? Does Xander just not...
Pop a boner?
Sexually to Cordelia? Just nonsense. Have y'all seen Charisma Carpenter?
Oh, yeah. I think he means...
Well, there's definitely going to be sex. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Probably.
like exposedly up with people.
Right. Yeah. This is a fun talking dance we're having, y'all.
Yes.
I still have trouble believing that, considering they were together for almost 2 years, and they were, like, within a week of each other being together, they were, like, making out in broom closets and stuff like that.
Maybe they weren't ready.
And it was, yeah, maybe Cordelia just couldn't stand the idea of fucking Xander, which I can't blame her.
Nor me. Bless.
Yeah, but, I mean, there's really... The music and everything is just so, I'll fade.
Yeah. Although, but it does call back to the early time when we first met Faith, and she talks about being really horny after slaying.
Hungry and horny, yeah. And, I will get... I do enjoy...
to plug to anything that is consistent with actual Buffy at this point.
Though I do enjoy her, like, kicking him out right away, and it's like, that was fun, got a shower.
Yeah. Well, no, she does give him like a minute of lying in bed. And then it's snuggles. Like, okay, bye.
And we get to Giles and Willow shooting Oz, and in a scene that does not make any sense, because why don't they just shoot Oz through the grates?
Yes.
They were large enough to get the gun for him.
So question, is this the first time anyone's tranked Oz on the first try?
Yes.
I find that hilarious. And she does it twice.
Willow's become a good shot, y'all.
Yeah, but I mean, if I were Willow, I seriously would have put, like, because it was...
Oh, yeah.
You could fit it right through the grating in that, and then move him after he's been put out, instead of, like, knocking Giles over again.
Yeah, no, that was absolutely my thought is, why are you opening the cage? Yeah. What is wrong with you?
Yeah. And Xander figures out that they're making a bomb, and I want to know what Xander thought they were doing robbing a hardware store.
Baking a cake.
Baking a cake, yeah. A hardware cake.
Don't you buy your baking?
They wanted to make a pie out of steel, which would be bad.
Or funny, depending on what kind of sight gag you're doing.
Yeah, well, yes.
Yeah, what a part of me wants to be like, wait, why did Xander think they were going to make a bomb? It was just like kerosene and shit. Who are you?
Was there fertilizer in there? No. I don't remember anymore. No.
Xander's got a copy of the Anarchist Cookbook.
I guess.
There you go.
Yeah. And look, for all of the flack we give this episode, this Buffy and Angel scene is actually one of my favorite Buffy and Angel scenes. Because this is actually a pretty good parody scene of them.
Yes.
It reminds me of the anime Fushigi Yugi, where they had this couple that were always shouting each other's names at each other, to the point of, like, they actually made it a drinking game, and there was a disclaimer on it that said, please don't actually play this because you will die from alcohol poisoning. But then when they did one of their original video animations, for the entire OVA, they did nothing but say each other's names. And that's kind of what this scene reminds me of, because this scene actually does kind of go over the top in the way where it's like, this is an actual parody of a Buffy and Angel scene. And this is like, this is like the broken clock is right twice a day, where it's like, this scene actually does work for me.
And as far as Xander's perspective is concerned, pretty accurate. As far
exactly,
as
yeah.
When it comes to...
Yeah. But of course, this is the scene where they go, this is worse than anything we've ever faced, right?
Yeah.
So again, that just pisses me off repeatedly in this episode, because like, you're telling me that, but I don't believe you for 1 second.
This is worse than anything we've ever faced. Hey, Angel, do you remember that time you tortured Giles and murdered his girlfriend?
And tried to suck the world into a vortex of hell? Yeah,
Which is why I think that this episode works really well in tandem with Doomed, where they're both apocalypses that take place in the middle of the season. And in this one, it's so overwrought, but in Doomed, they're like, again? And they're just like not taking it seriously at all, and it's done for pure comedy. But I think that one is a better episode. Giles and Willow doing a binding spell, and Giles not having contacts, I can understand. Giles not having books, I don't understand.
Yeah, no, that makes no sense.
Like, I mean, is it because they were all burnt in gingerbread?
Let's go with that.
Oh, maybe, yeah. Of course, this is the point in my my notes where I have bored now as my note.
My notes get a little bit thin as we're going on. I do like Xander threatening the zombie. I think this is like, okay, Xander is actually being kind of...
That's actually a good scene.
Yeah.
That is actually a good scene. I will give them that.
Like,
which one?
The scene where Xander grabs the zombie and is like
by the head. Okay.
Yeah, is pulling him along. And one thing I have to say is, while the writing doesn't impress me, Nikki's acting actually really does impress me, especially from this point on. I think he does a good job of balancing like comedy with pathos, and it's while everybody else is completely one-dimensional, Xander is actually multifaceted in this, and I think Nikki shows more than we've really seen of him before.
Cry when he saw the script for this episode?
Yes, Nikki cried when he saw the script for this episode. He was so delighted with it and the meaning for his character.
Nikki needs a hobby. He's
got one, David.
Don't remind me. Okay. Yes, I think he's got a bowling thing set coming up. No, I have to agree. Like Nikki, I can't fault Nikki for how bad this episode is, because he does a great job with what he is given. I mean, what he's given. I'm reminded of Peter Capaldi's first season on Doctor Who.
Yeah.
Which I will go on about at length if allowed to. But like the writing on that season, some of the worst writing. That worst season of Doctor Who for writing ever.
But he is wonderful,
and he's good. He's great. But the scripts are just crap. And this script is just—it's not a good script. It has a good idea at its core somewhere, but the execution is just not good. Well, it's actively bad, but it's actively not good.
Yeah. So we get into the fight/chase around the school. One thing I do want to know is, okay, let's think about these zombies, who I know don't have a lot of motivation or characterization outside of they are a gang of zombies.
What do you mean? They want to drink beer and bake cakes.
And this is going to sound rather controversial, but not brave. I don't understand blowing up a school in the middle of the night. I would think that these guys, and like this is also very hard for me to say considering this episode was like a minute before Combine. I would actually think that these guys would want to set a bomb at the school that would go off during the day.
Oh, you think malcontented white boys would want to kill a bunch of people? Huh. That's something I've never considered before, MC. Yeah, it's a very good point, and it. But
I mean, leaving aside your general point, which I take and agree with, but in this particular case, what would be their motivation?
But here's the question: what's their motivation for putting the bomb into the school in the first place? They've expressed no actual problems with the school up to this point. They talked about kicking the Armenian shop owner's ass.
Yeah,
because he killed that one guy, and apparently Sunnydale has multiple gangs, and they enough that they've wiped one of them out, but they've decided to put this bomb into the school for no reason other than we need to have Xander at the school so that the Hellmouth stuff can go on in the background.
Right. I guess my reading is that they're just very anti-authoritarian, and the school is just an authoritarian symbol.
Then why does Jack keep going back?
Oh, because he wants to menace his people.
He could do that from outside.
But I think it's another sign
It's a handy place to menace people.
But it's another sign of this episode having little thought put into it in regards to the motivations of anybody.
Yes. For me, this is less than some of the other stuff, but yes, you're right. It's not good. It's not well done.
Yeah.
It's not thought out.
Yeah, but Xander runs around and he drops soda machines on the zombies and...
It's got a great line that I think he should take as own advice. The note to self, talk less.
Yes.
Yeah. Andy's not here, so I should point out, we have a shirt for sale that says, "Shut up, Xander."
Available on TeePublic and Redbubble.
Yes.
Hey, if we're not going to break into random... Yeah, HelloFresh is a blah, 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 blah for our podcast. We might as well.
Try to sell our own stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like, there's running around in the hallways and the zombies are randomly taken out. Until we get down to Xander and Jack in the boiler room. The whole thing takes a lot longer than 49 seconds.
Oh, God, yes.
It really does.
But I will say, before the boiler room, there is the one part of this episode where they actually, like, woke up and said, "Oh, we're writers, we should know something about story structure." The part where the Hellmouth Beast kills one of the zombies, bringing the two stories together.
Right, yes.
It's like, hey, good piece of story structure.
I almost felt like that scene when they were running through the hallways, it turned into a Scooby-Doo episode.
Absolutely what I was thinking.
I was thinking, actually, the other day, before I watched this even, so, like, it's such a shame that Buffy never did a Scooby-Doo, like an actual Scooby-Doo episode, like Supernatural did.
Well, Oz drives a van, I guess that's...
yeah, exactly. But yes, then we have the scene in the boiler room.
The scene in the boiler room that takes much longer than 49 seconds.
Right.
But I am going to let it go, because this, when I'm saying that Nikki acts very well in this episode, this scene is him just acting the fuck out of things.
Yeah.
Yep.
This scene is the point of this episode.
It is.
Yep.
Like, this is the only worthwhile part of this episode.
I am pretty sure they wrote this first and then wrote everything else around it.
I mean, Nikki's delivery and the line, actually, when he goes, "I like the quiet." That is a fantastic moment. And it really is just, like, it almost makes this episode worth watching.
Of course, he's full of shit, because when has Xander ever been quiet?
Oh, yeah. Although it does come up again in the last scene. He says something about, "I like the quiet life," or something.
Yeah. Give me the quiet life, yeah.
I think this sets the tone for however minimal it may be. Well, honestly, we'll have to get to it when we get to it. But as far as, like, Xander's character development is concerned, his willingness to die sounds shitty, but it's one of his better qualities, because but here you see when push comes to shove.
That's good.
No, it's gone. I lost it with the suicidal bit.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's the way he is willing to sacrifice himself is one of his best qualities. It's why he's the heart when it comes to when they take out Adam. It's why he was so effective in dealing with Evil Willow. It's one of his better qualities, and it's nice that we get to see Nikki given these opportunities to be something other than Xander.
This is also, I think, one of the first times we see Xander making one of his big speeches, where it's like one thing that I will always give to Xander, like, even though I have so many problems with him, he's always really good at rallying at, at crunch time, where he will come out with these big speeches. He does it in The Freshman, he does it in Grave, he does it in Potential, where he will sum everything up in this Xander way, and he's really good at doing it. Like, they make fun of Buffy for making speeches, and I think that's because Xander's the one who should actually be making the speeches.
It is his greatest strength. I have to say, though, you talk about his sacrifice here. I'm torn on what's actually going on here, because the way I've always kind of seen it, and the way we're clearly supposed to see it, is Xander as it's a noble sacrifice. This time through, because I'm paying more attention maybe, it occurred to me, maybe this isn't as quote-unquote noble as we think it is, because basically everyone's been treating Xander like shit and like he doesn't matter throughout this entire episode. And maybe he's just like, you know what? My life isn't worth continuing, and if I can use it, if I can use my death to do something about this, why not?
I have a third perspective on this, and that I think that is that Xander is playing chicken with...
Yeah.
Oh, well, yeah.
He's bluffing. Sure.
Because the whole thing is, Xander knows he can't get out of there in time. He can't disarm the bomb. That Jack is the only person that can do it. So he's basically just... The only thing he can do at the moment is use his words, which we know Xander is really good at doing. And so basically, he's just trying to scare Jack into saying, it's like, I'm not afraid to die, are you?
He Dirty Harrys him into fucking disarming that bomb.
He does, yeah.
I expected him to fully do that. Do you feel lucky?
That's basically what he does, yeah.
And Jack is totally a punk, yeah.
Jack disarms the bomb, and... Okay, Oz Ex Machina is hilarious.
I have a question. Does this technically make Oz a murderer?
Yes.
No.
Yes.
Wait, okay, alright.
Well, okay, yeah, well, that hinges on the question of how alive we consider Jack.
Yeah.
He's
but I mean, again, we come back to the thing we keep coming back to, which is it okay to kill a human, depending on what that means?
My question was, is it cannibalism?
I think that would be, yes.
Well, he's a different species. He's a lycanthrope.
I don't... that's a good question. I'm not sure if that makes him a different species per se, because, I mean, he does have human form. He just is able to transfer into a different form. This is... Yeah, we're now running into... We need more information to actually confirm that question.
Yeah, like, are werewolves actually a different species, or are they just humans with, like, a chronic disease?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Fair enough. He did eat a whole human being, dead or not. Let's just...
Yes.
Well, we don't know if he ate all of it.
Enough to make him full.
Enough to make him full into the next day, and enough that nobody ever wonders, hey, why is there, like, a half-eaten dead body in the basement?
Yeah, and also, by the way, given that scene with Oz there, it's like, those tranks are really not very effective.
No.
They need better tranquilizer darts.
They work fast, but they don't last long.
No.
Yeah. Listeners, respond. Is it cannibalism? Is Oz a murderer?
Yeah, I mean, if you have opinions on this, I would really be interested to hear what people think, because... This is a damn good question.
We were talking about also Slayer metabolism before, and werewolf metabolism must be amazing, because, I mean, Seth Green is absolutely tiny, and Shannon Rowe is fairly big, so, yeah, I mean, the fact that he doesn't look like a snake that is just devoured like a house cat.
Oh, God, the image. Oh. Just Oz little pot belly in Jack's face. I'm flashing back to Anaconda, y'all. Give me a break.
Oh, I thought you were flashing back to Love and Monsters. But...
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Anyway, so we get to the last scene, and the gang are being, again, so overblown with talk about the Hellmouth.
Yeah. And my note is, like, this post-apocalypse deconstruction scene would have worked so well in any other episode, and here it's just, oh god, this is such useless crap.
Yeah. But I mean, we've talked earlier about how this episode doesn't make any sense because they're trying to put Xander in this role that he's never been in before, and it especially doesn't make sense here about the fact that they are discussing this Hellmouth thing with Oz right there, who has not been a part of this story because he's been a werewolf the entire time. So why is Oz brought into this when Xander isn't? Because
Oz, say he's full.
Yeah, Oz doesn't have any powers except for his sense of smell. The lycanthropy, if anything, is more a detriment than it is a benefit until later on in the comics when he can actually control it.
Because at this point, he's just a mindless creature when he's transformed.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a really interesting thing. He is the only member of the Scooby Gang who is legitimately part of Xander's story more than he is part of the Apocalypse story in this episode.
Cordelia, but I mean, it depends on where you think of Cordelia as part of the Scooby Gang.
Well, Cordelia is mainly there to torture Xander. I mean, okay, yeah, you're right. So maybe Cordelia, but as an active participant in Scooby activities.
If you were going to do a Lower Decks episode, having an episode about Oz and Cordelia would have made a lot more sense than Xander.
Yeah, for sure.
So then we get to the last scene of Cordelia trying to torture Xander, and instead he's just going to power walk away from her.
Yeah, I was kind of almost looking forward to that, and then I watched it, and I'm like, this scene does its job, it's not actually particularly good or satisfying.
No, it reminds me of when Cordelia essentially does the same thing, walking away from, what do they call them, the Cordeliettes, or whatever? Cordettes, that's right, yeah. When she's like, fuck it, I'm dating this loser, and like middle fingers out of there, but in a poorly done way. So
yeah, this just, it's there because it has to be there to wrap up the annoyingly insistent thing of Cordy continually ripping Xander a new one throughout the episode at random points.
Like, you're meant to be on Xander's side. You're meant to be like, Xander, tell her, but I'm not. I'm on Cordelia's side. He cheated on her, and then she got rebarred. I'm on Cordelia's side.
Yeah.
I mean, and that's the thing. I mean, a lot of this all depends on how you feel about whether you think that Xander keeping all of what happened to him during this night to himself a good thing or not. And there are certainly, I mean, I can think of at least one practical reason that it's not a good thing.
Is it because he doesn't know that Jack is dead?
That's part of it. Also, as far as we know, there's still some guy wandering around who can raise the dead.
Very good point.
Mm-hmm.
Without having to make any sort of bargains with Osiris, he can just do it.
Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Fuck.
But that's just a continuation of Xander never telling anyone anything about what's going on with him during the episode. It's just,
I have a hard time believing that Xander wouldn't immediately be like, hey, y'all, while you were doing the apocalypse thing, I stopped somebody from blowing up the school. How great am I?
I didn't stop somebody. I stopped a bunch of zombies.
Mm-hmm.
Some bodies.
Yeah. But I think we've reached our final thoughts on this episode. And I think we've already gotten into it a lot, but...
Can I say that, Nikki was a great actor. Do you know who my MVP for this episode is? Christoph Beck. I think when given the chance, especially when it comes to humor, as far as his composition is concerned, he does such an excellent job. We see it in Hush. And I think giving him free reign the way I guess he did to, as a composer, tell a story through music, the way he got to in this episode, is so great. I really, really enjoyed just listening to the score because it made it a better episode than it deserved to be.
Yeah.
Well, I think David's trying to put his thoughts together, I think.
Oh, yeah. I think, honestly, my final thoughts are the same thoughts I've had from the beginning. So my initial thoughts and my final thoughts are not terribly different.
I feel really weird about this episode because I remember the first time I saw it, I really did not care for it. It's like I did not understand why this big apocalypse was going on, and we were instead focusing on Xander. And then later on, it's like, oh, well, I guess I missed the point of this episode, and I ended up enjoying it a lot more. But looking back on it now, it's like, no, I still... It's not even that they didn't focus on the apocalypse. It's just that everything was kind of poorly done. And like I said, I am a fan of Lower Decks stories. I love Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, I did. But that's not what this is. This is what this wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also, people don't understand or appreciate Zeppo Marx.
Well, that too. But
Yeah.
but I mean, my biggest problem is it's just poorly done.
Yeah.
It's just like, I mean, I see what they were trying for, and it's not a bad idea, but they botched it so badly that I'm just like, no, go back and redo this or not do this. This is the worst of all possible worlds.
So, in terms of music for this episode, we got quite a few. When Xander's driving around in his uncle's car, we have Dodgems by Soundstage Limited. When Xander and Lizette are at the Bronze, we've got G-Song by Supergrass. When Xander's driving the zombies around town, we have Easy by Tricky Woo. And at the end of the episode, Xander power walks away from Cordelia to For the Glory by Extreme Music. And so I think that's it for the Zeppo. I think that wraps things up. So next time we'll be reviewing Bad Girls. So until then, grr, arg.
Grr, arg.
Grr, arg.
We'd like to thank everyone who downloaded the podcast, and an extra special thanks to everyone who shared, liked, and subscribed on social media. If you'd like your questions or comments read on the show, you can contact us on our website, returntothehellmouth.com, on YouTube, Tumblr, and Facebook at Return to the Hellmouth, on Twitter at HellmouthReturn, or on email at returntothehellmouth@gmail.com. We'll be sure to read your comments on the show. Be sure to rate our show at iTunes and Stitcher, and check out our show merchandise on TeePublic and Redbubble. See you on Tuesday.
Grr, arg.